Joining us now by phone is Sidney Powell. She's a member, obviously, of the president's legal team, also General Michael Flynn's defense attorney, a great American, one of the country's leading appellate attorneys. Sidney, first of all, thanks. I know you are going every which direction right now, busy as you could possibly be. Let's start out right now with the president's path to victory here as you and the legal team see it.
That was Lou Dobbs back when he had a Fox Business show, speaking with former Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell, and you heard him refer to her as Trump campaign lawyer Sidney Powell, before Fox told him to basically scram due to his lies about the 2020 presidential election. Now, even though it was abundantly clear on that day, which was November 19th, 2020, that Powell was in fact working for the Donald Trump legal team, Trump now claims that no, what are you guys talking about? She was never on my legal team. So this might have something to do with the fact that she decided to take a plea deal in the Georgia election interference case. She is very likely going to testify and provide information in regard to the other co-conspirators in that case. One of those co-conspirators could be Donald Trump. And so that might explain why he's kind of distancing himself from her, but it's not the first time Trump has done that. So stick around, I'm gonna tell you when he did it previously, but let's get to his recent Truth Social post where he wrote the following. Despite the fake news reports to the contrary, and without even reaching out to ask the Trump campaign, Miss Powell was not my attorney and never was. In fact, she would have been conflicted. Miss Powell did a valiant job of representing a very unfairly treated and governmentally abused General Mike Flynn, but to no avail. So he told the truth about one thing there. She did represent Mike Flynn to no avail. She was in fact Trump's most vocal defendant publicly as he was undergoing investigation for his alleged ties to Russia during the Mueller investigation. Apparently, Powell's outspokenness drew the attention of Trump's ex-national security advisor, Michael Flynn, who hired Powell as his lawyer in 2019, more than a year after he pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about his contacts with the Russian government. In fact, Trump tweeted about that at the time, saying that Mike Flynn, the 33-year-old or 33-year war hero who has served with distinction, has not retained a good lawyer. He has retained a great lawyer, Sidney Powell. Best wishes and good luck to them both. And she wasn't a great lawyer. She basically tried to use like a crazy legal theory to reverse his guilty plea. Remember, Michael Flynn pleaded guilty, but in the end, her efforts didn't matter because William Barr came in and pardoned Michael Flynn. Now, fast forward to November 14th of 2020 when Trump tweeted the following. I look forward to Mayor Giuliani spearheading the legal effort to defend our right to free and fair elections. Giuliani, Joseph DeGeneva, Victoria Tonsing, Sidney Powell, and Jenna Ellis, a truly great team added to our other wonderful lawyers and representatives, Trump said. So, I mean, how much more evidence do you need?
Guys, they were in the same press conference. You all saw it with your own eyes. And she talked about releasing the Kraken. She was famous for saying that they were going to release the Kraken of evidence. And what did that Kraken have? Nothing, zero, no evidence. 60 court cases, they never put together anything together. Is Sidney Powell a terrible lawyer? I have no idea. Why do I say I have no idea? Because she keeps representing people who are preposterously guilty. So there's nothing they could have ever done because there is no evidence that the election was stolen. They were lying the whole time. And they all know that they were lying, and it's in the memos that they were lying. They even wrote memos about fake electors, and they called them fake electors. That's because they're idiots. And they even wrote down their criminality on paper. So now, look, MAGA, I can't understand, no one else can understand you guys. So do you think that Sidney Powell was not one of Trump's lawyers? Even though you just saw the quote of Donald Trump saying that she was part of his legal team. I don't know how to communicate to you. You all saw her with your own eyes with Rudy Giuliani and Jenna Ellis representing Donald Trump. Has that been wiped from your memory? Do you live on this planet? Of course she was one of Trump's lawyers, of course, right? So now she's turning against him. Now look, the downside of that, the upside of it is that the evidence that she has could be devastating. And I'll get back to why I think that she might have the goods in a second. The downside is, yeah, her credibility is questionable.
Well, yeah, and look, before you get to your goods, like what you're gonna show to indicate that she might have some dirt on Trump, I think it's worth knowing why the Trump campaign did distance themselves from Sidney Powell previously, okay? Now, I turned to some really interesting text messages that were unearthed during the January 6th Select Committee investigating January 6th. Let's go to graphic 5. Zachary Cohen had shared the tweets at the time, or the text, I should say, through a tweet. These texts show Senator Mike Lee advocated for Sidney Powell in early November and pushed Meadows to give her access to Trump. So I looked at those messages. I want to read this exchange from Mike Lee to Mark Meadows, who was the chief of staff for Donald Trump at the time. Sidney Powell is saying that she needs to get in to see the president, but she's being kept away from him. Apparently, she has a strategy to keep things alive and put several states back in play. Can you help her get in? And then he didn't get a response from Mark Meadows and writes again, it was the president's request that Sidney has been working on a strategy and has been trying to get in to see him, but she's being kept out. And then he writes again, okay? Shares information for Sidney Powell. Sidney Powell was a pro-Trump lawyer who was part of the effort to overturn the 2020 presidential election, right? That's just a note, that's not a message that he sent, but he just sent the information to contact Sidney Powell. But then the disastrous press conference happened, okay? So let's take a look at the press conference I'm referring to, and I'll tell you what the Trump campaign did afterward.
The Dominion voting systems, the Smartmatic technology software, and the software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election after one constitutional referendum came out the way he did not want it to come out.
You couldn't possibly believe that the company counting our vote, with control over our vote, is owned by two Venezuelans who were allies of Chavez, are present allies of Maduro, with a company whose chairman is a close associate and business partner of George Soros.
So 3 days after that, remember that was November 19th, 2020. 3 days after that, on November 22nd, 2020, the Trump team puts out a notice or a statement, I should say, reading that Sidney Powell is practicing law on her own. She is not a member of the Trump legal team. She's also not a lawyer for the president in his personal capacity. Now, the reporting at the time indicated that the reason why they distanced themselves from Sidney Powell was because she's a lunatic and she carried herself like a lunatic during that press conference. Trump has been agitated about Giuliani and Powell for a few days, advisors said, complaining about how Powell had sounded at the news conference, how black liquid had dripped down Giuliani's face, and about how long the appearance had stretched on. And it was a very long press conference. But to me, Cenk, that didn't make any sense, because why distance themselves from Sidney Powell, which I admit, yes, absolutely is a lunatic, but then not distance yourself from Rudy Giuliani, who looked like an even bigger lunatic and was a bigger lunatic than Sidney Powell. In fact, you know who promoted that press conference? Donald Trump. In a tweet, he quote tweeted it and said, a rigged election, drawing more attention to it. So I just don't buy that it's really about the press conference. I think they distanced themselves from Sidney Powell because of what she said on Lou Dobbs' interview in November of 2020, because she kind of disclosed what their plan was, what their plot was. Let's watch.
The entire election, frankly, in all the swing states should be overturned, and the legislatures should make sure that the electors are selected for Trump.
You're not supposed to say the quiet parts out loud yet, Sidney Powell. That was November 19th, 2020, the same night as the press conference.
So remember, they do the fake elector plot, and it all goes all the way to January 6th. And the point of the violence on January 6th was to delay the proceedings so they could say, we're not sure who won, we're sending it back to the states where they had the fake electors waiting. Now, Sidney Powell saying that publicly ahead of time is deeply problematic, because they're supposed to pretend that they're real electors, and golly gee, all the way in January, they couldn't resolve this issue, so they had to figure out which electors to go to. But if you already have the fake electors ready to go in November, and you say that, Well, you didn't screw up the plan, you screwed up by making the plan public.
Exactly, which also leads me to believe she's privy to the details of that plan and the discussions that we're having behind the scenes.
So which leads to my theory, which is in this plea deal, she got no jail time. She was a central, pivotal player. I mean, there you saw her on Lou Dobbs in November explaining how they're gonna bring in the Trump electors and pretend he won in the swing states. And they're gonna bring it to the Republican legislatures, et cetera, right? So why is she getting no jail time? That means her cooperation was excellent.
Now, if she were Trump's attorney, there could be an argument made that those conversations are protected by attorney-client privilege, but Trump says she was never his attorney.
Oops.
And Trump was asked about that. Let's hear what he had to say.
Mr. President, you said Sidney Powell wasn't your attorney. Are you concerned that you won't be covered by attorney-client privilege?
No, not at all. We did nothing wrong. We did nothing. This is all Biden. Indictments and impeachments. And this is all about Biden. He can't do anything right. The only thing they know how to do is cheat on elections and election fraud. This is all Biden stuff. All of these indictments that you see. I was never indicted. Practically never heard the word. It wasn't a word that registered.
Great answer. So it's all about Biden. He never even heard the word indictment until recently. He just made up.
Yeah, which doesn't speak well of you. You should try to read a little bit. And that's, if you read past the page, you might have heard of the word indictment. Well, you have now, congratulations. And congratulations on blowing your only potential defense against Sidney Powell's testimony, which was attorney-client privilege, because you just told us she was never your attorney. Hey, MAGA, earlier in this segment, weren't you mad at me? Well, she was never the attorney, never the attorney. Okay, never the attorney, no attorney-client privilege. Enjoy that. Look, guys, they've got 3 people that have flipped already. And so I didn't cover the Cheesebro story on TYT. Let me just tell you something. Cheesebro flipping is huge.
It is huge. He's the guy, okay, he's co-conspirator 5 in the indictment. He is the guy who passed around the memos specifically referring to their fake electors as fake electors and fraudulent electors. I think he just had a moment where he's like, this evidence that they have against me is pretty compelling. Maybe I should take the plea deal. Yeah.
So
he's a lawyer, by the way.
Look, I was already telling you Fani Willis was doing a great job. Now it's over the top. Setting up those 19, a lot of people questioned her strategy on that. Oh, there's too many people at the same time. Nope. She set them up and knocked them down. So she got one person to flip, then she got Sidney Powell to flip, and apparently Trump was surprised that Sidney Powell flipped. You and your allies were all throwing her under the bus. Everybody testifying was like, it wasn't me, it was Sidney Powell, it was Sidney Powell. What did you think she was gonna do? But Trump is maniacally stupid. He can't strategize himself out of a wet paper bag. So he was surprised by Powell, but Powell needs someone to corroborate what she's saying because he's not the world's greatest witness. We're honest about that. You see the difference between liars and honesty, right? So, but once Powell flipped, Cheesebro was like, oh, I'm toast. She has all the information. Now I'm gonna go to jail. And I thought that Trump would get me out of this, but turns out, no, we're screwed. So Cheesebro flips. He's a very credible witness. He wrote the fraudulent elector memo. He's gonna corroborate what Sidney Powell says. Look, guys, later in the show, we have a story about Trump Republicans and what they believe. The thing we're trying to get everybody to understand is that those folks don't know the same things you know or I know. I don't know if these trials will break through, but if you televise all of this damning testimony and you explain to people something they've never heard, because the Democrats never even focused on it. They kept pounding the guys inside the Capitol who attacked the Congress. Why? Because they were worried about their personal safety. And they never touched the elites. But once the American people, including Trump voters, see the fake elector memo, maybe it moves very few of them. But I think that there's some chance it could move a lot of independents and maybe even some MAGA voters who go, oh, I didn't know they were fake. I thought that Biden stole the election. We were trying to steal the election. Yes, brothers and sisters, Trump was trying to steal the election. And now there's 3 people who are gonna tell you that in these televised hearings.
Hey, thanks for watching that video. We really appreciate it, guys. And we appreciate it if you become members, because that allows us to be independent, honest, progressive, all the things that you don't get from corporate media. And all of that is because of you guys. Hit the join button below and become one of us. Become a Young Turk.